Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our backyard. This morning's video, I would like to share with you a couple of updates, and then I've got a couple of new plants that I purchased based on some recommendations from a fellow YouTuber. My name is Crystal, and I garden in Zone 9B south of Houston, close to the Texas Gulf Coast. And so it is May and we are hot and humid. In fact, today is supposed to be 89 degrees. So this is a great update for my caladiums. But I had to start out with my birds because I've had there's some pretty good bird activity and I'm pretty close. Got a family of chickadees here, and they have taught their fledglings, their youngsters, how to eat from the bird feeders. And let me go over to this one. These are house finches. And then there's a female cardinal over here. And just there's been a lot of activity. So I thought it would be kind of nice to start out with the close birds. But anyway, one thing about caladiums is it takes a while for them to get started because they require heat, lots of it. And so I planted something which is a first for me. I mentioned in a prior video is I planted my caladiums along the fence from bulbs. So let's go over there. So I planted a different caladium bulbs in each one of these borders. And what I used to have here were cardinal climber. And you can see, I'm going to get a little bit closer. Still got the fishing line up in the pattern. I'm not convinced that I'm not going to plant cardinal climber here again, but we didn't this year because along this side of our fence, it didn't get enough sun. So let me come over here to where we do plant our cardinal climber. And it grows beautifully and it's starting to take off. As you can see, I am getting some spring blooming along here. And so this is fun because it really is pretty and it does not hurt your fences because the tendrils don't grow onto the fence and through it like some vines do. Some vines are pretty destructive. But in any case, I have mentioned in prior videos that what we do is we get landscaping border, and this is border that just interlocks, and it's purely for weed whacking, so we don't hurt the vines when we mow an edge. So what I thought I would do, because we decided not to plant cardinal climber along this fence, is I thought I would plant caladiums because caladiums do so well down here. And I do love them and I think they're great. And I'm thankful that they finally came up. I don't know if I'm going to plant them again along the fence, but this was really good for me to do this. Because what I did is I, like many people, see quality bulbs. Longfield Gardens is a quality bulb, and I saw these at Costco. And so I do really, really love caladiums in the yard because they grow so well from us. And this is also from Longfield Gardens. And the bulbs that they have is there are more bulbs and a cheaper price at Costco, and I thought, well, let me try it. So there are 5 different bulbs, 4 in this bag and 1 in this bag, and I thought I would try to plant bulbs. And I've never planted bulbs before. I typically like to plant the plant so I can see what I'm getting. So what I did is I planted the bulbs in each one of these 5 borders. And they came up at different times. And I would say generally they're pretty darn true to color. The one that is a little different for me is this one. And it's called Fannie Munson. And when you read it on their website, it's supposed to be this bright pink. I don't really see a bright pink yet. I'm going to walk over here. What I see is a pretty stunning red. I mean, this is stunning. It's beautiful. I just wouldn't call that pink. What do you think? So the big takeaway for me is most of them are true to their picture. This one on the end is supposed to be the largest, and this one is called White Christmas. Looks a little different. Still very pretty, but it looks a little different for me. This one is called Red Flash, and I think that one is pretty true to its picture. Red Flash. And this is the Fannie Munson that's supposed to be pink. This one is supposed to be the Carolyn Whorton. Let me show you this one. A little less pink for me. This one has a tad bit more shade. Maybe that's why. And this final one took the longest to come up. And this one is called White Queen. And this one looks very much like the picture to me. So when I do look out from the patio or my kitchen window, I do like to see this pop of color. And these are going to fill in more throughout time. These two took the longest to come up, but I do like the pop of color. I just don't know if I will plant caladiums here again. And my takeaway is it's certainly less expensive to plant the bulbs, but you might not get exactly what you think you're getting, I guess is the best way to say it. For me, I like to see what I'm getting, but I'm very pleased with this. I do have 4 pots of caladiums that I just overwinter outside, and two of them have not come up yet, which last year they all came up, and this one is just starting to come up. I think part of the reason is I do have a squirrel issue with the squirrels digging in the pots, and so if I'm not diligent and put deterrent down in the pots, I get more digging. These are caladiums I needed to replace this year, so I put in 2 bedding plants into my containers. I think these were $2.99 each, so $6 per container isn't a bad thing because I know what I'm getting, and I don't know, that works for me. This happens to be a container of caladiums, and I purchased it last year. This is probably one of my favorites, and I don't think it's all going to come up. So I had a couple big plants in here, and I don't know. If it doesn't start producing soon, I guess I'm going to have to dig and see if I've lost, because I might have to replace this container with some bulbs. So I did have a suggestion, and I do know this. If you dig up the caladium bulbs and overwinter them inside, let's say in a garage or your coolest place that you can, For me, that would probably be the garage or, inside, which is the 70s and it's not very cool. But I do know that. I've just had success with them overwintering outside, the caladiums. And so I am a butterfly and hummingbird gardener, and a caladium does not provide nectar, anything really of value for my pollinators. But what it does for me is it does provide a pop in the garden. So I like to plant my caladiums along with coleus, and coleus do provide nectar. In the late summer, I let my coleus flower, and they are just covered. As you see here, my coleus are doing very well. They're just covered with pollinators. And so my coleus plants are amongst my caladiums, and my coleus do bloom. Caladiums do not, but again, they provide that color that I just really like in the shade garden. And every area has their strengths of what does well in a shade garden. A lot of part of the country, in a lot of areas, hostas and heuchera, coral bells, bleeding hearts, they all just do so beautifully for so many of you, but they don't down here for me in the shade garden. We're either too wet, too humid, too hot, and I have purchased so many different types of heuchera and hostas, and they don't thrive. And so I'd rather plant something that thrives and looks beautiful in the garden rather than something that struggles. And so for me, part of that equation is a caladium. So what do you think? Do you think my container of Proven Winners Albrighto, this is a Color Blaze coleus, do you think Albrighto, I love it, is providing a little pop of color, a little bit of drama on this side of the shade garden? That's what my goal was, so I sure hope so. So for a frame of reference, on this north end of my garden, I have the shade bed. Then I've got my caladiums along the fence. I have what I call the north bed, real creative. I have the cardinal climber that is growing up the fishing line on the fence. And then I use under my very beautiful cypress tree, bald cypress, I use this as a staging area because this is nice and shady, and I typically stage it and have things in here that I'm going to be putting out into the garden. So one of the things I did purchase recently are some plants that I need to either replace in some of my containers, my hanging baskets. But this one I'm super excited about. This one is a Stoke's Aster. The specific color is Peachy's Pick. And I got this recommendation from Jo, from Jo's Texas Garden. Love her channel. She's in Houston, and she showed her Stoke's Aster, and I thought, oh my goodness, that is something I want to add to my new garden bed. And so I have a couple of these. I'm really excited to get them in. And mine have buds, so they're going to be blooming soonish. But it says to put in full sun. They're fairly short. And I've got the place for them, zones 5 through 9. This happens to be, these are natives to Texas, which is wonderful. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to add the Stoke's Aster. So where I'm looking to add them is to my new garden bed. And on This side I have Tithonia, which is going to grow very, very tall. This is a full sun garden bed. And I haven't completely decided where I'm going to add the Stoke's Aster, but thanks, Joe, for that recommendation in her video. It was fun to see how beautiful those blooms were. And I think I'm going to replace this coneflower, and I'm going to put the 2 Stoke's Asters, one here and one in this area. And the reason I'm looking at replacing this one is because of those leaves. I bought it at the same time that I purchased these coneflowers, but my experience, and you can tell me, folks, all you gardeners, if I am wrong, my experience with those that look like this do not bloom well. In fact, I've had them in my north garden bed, and they're terrible bloomers, and their blooms are like deformed. And so that's why, when I saw that and how that is progressing, it's like, yeah, I'm not too keen on this. But if I am wrong, let me know in the comments. So I don't have a lot of experience. I just have very minimal experience. But when they do that, my minimal experience has been, I don't want that in the garden. Any thoughts? So anyway, I'm really excited to get the Stoke's Aster into the new garden bed. And the new garden bed has been growing beautifully. I love what it's doing, and it's going to fill in pretty quickly. As you can see, the Tithonia, which they do what Tithonia does, they grow large, loud and proud. I have really good luck with Terenia down here. This is Terenia, or wishbone flower. My hummingbirds love it. Butterflies go to it. Of course, the pollinators go to it. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be replacing and putting some Terenia in my containers, because it's a wonderful spiller. And so my hanging baskets and a couple of my containers. I do have this Terenia, which is Catalina Midnight Blue. Last year I also bought a Catalina Terenia, and it was gorgeous, and I just wanted a different bloom color this year, and so I chose this one. And this one is, they're beautiful fillers and spillers in containers, Terenia is, and I love how they bring hummingbirds close to my patio door. And then to round off, I've got another white out Superbena. I love how vigorous this plant is. I have a couple of pentas. Pentas are a staple in my garden, although this year I don't have many. So I need to figure out how to get more pentas and where to put them. And then down over here I have a couple of ageratum, and I like to put ageratum. This is a really nice ground cover. This one is Aloha, what kind of blue? Dwarf blue. Aloha, come on, Aloha Dwarf Blue. And ageratum as a ground cover does really well for me, and I'm going to be putting a couple of these plants into what I call my 4x4 bed. And I also have an interesting color, or I should say new to me. This is called a pink. Oh, come on, let's focus. Let me set it down here. Sorry about that. With my broken fingers, I have some challenges here. This one is called a pink porterweed. Isn't that beautiful? Oh my goodness. So this was new. I've not seen at the nursery that I go to a pink porterweed. And so I was real excited to get this. And so this is also a new plant that I'll be putting into my gardens. So thank you for joining me today in my new caladium bulb update. And some plans that I have for a couple of plants, new plants that I have purchased. I hope you have a great day today. And I hope to see you again soon.